What are we doing today, Ben?
We are cupping Scott Rao's Defect Roasting Kit.
Roasted by
Regalia, is that right?
Regalia, Queens, New York City. And why are we doing this, Ben?
We are doing this because we are about educating the curious, and I am curious, and I like being educated,
Yeah.
so I can become a better roaster.
One of the things we invest heavily on every year is continued education and learning with ourselves. Whether that's going to Expo, being part of classes, which I haven't been a part of in a while because of COVID. But this year we've done, can't even count on our hands how many things we've done, right? We've done multiple roaster forums. We've been a part of auction lots. What else? We've done some other, we did a spice, Royal Cup, we did a spice sensory perception and analysis class.
We did a cupping with black and white coffee roasters where they sent us mystery coffees and we guessed the origin and the process.
We also did the glitter cat sniff and scratch. This is just the next fun thing that we're doing, but this one's a little more serious for us because we really want to take some time to evaluate what our roast profiles look like, because everything is recorded, and compare it to a lot of science experiments that Regalia and Scott Rao did to help roasters know if a roast is on point. Because at the end of the day, you can't really tell looking at the outside. You can tell if you have an Agtron reader, which we do not have. Agtron reader is basically a special device that reads the light through the coffee once you grind it to see if there's consistency from the external to the internal of the bean. But yeah, this will be a fun way. So quickly walk me through these.
Cool. Okay. So right now, over here we have the underdeveloped roast, which on this graph is going to be the red one, and then this one is going to be the baked roast, which is going to be the blue curve, and this is the good roast, which is the orange, yellowish kind of curve.
So one of the things, just to quickly note, as you our patrons are watching this and see the graph, is what you can tell is that the underdeveloped dips heavily. And what we're looking at here is the down curve. That's called the delta curve. It's basically showing us the opposite of the actual heat development and how fast the power is changing. So when we look at that down slide, the underdeveloped dips really heavy and stays that way. The baked one, you'll see kind of plateaus, dips up a little bit, and then crashes, and then a lot of times has a little bit of a dip at the end. And then the good one is just a nice, steady, consistent track downward all the way. No flicks, no plateaus, no crashes. And so we're gonna taste these, which, let's see, what do we, I know it's a Burundi, but these are all the same coffee.
They're all washed.
Science Experiment 101, never change more than one variable at a time. So these are all a Kayonza Burundi. It's a washed bourbon. So it's a singular varietal wash process, which is great. It's going to give us the cleanest, most intrinsic flavor of the bean. So yeah, we're just going to do our thing and you guys join along. So one of the things that's fascinating is because we know what we're doing, we know what we're cupping, it's very easy for your brain to think you understand what you're smelling or tasting. So it's going to be really unique with this one. Because I feel like I can smell it, the aromatics being a little grassier. But is that just my brain?
Yeah. Very hay-like.
Would I be able to do that on a cupping table if I didn't know? Probably not. I mean,
I'd like
to
to
think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely noticed something more off with this one, the underdeveloped, than I do the baked.
Right. At least with the aromatics, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've told you in the past that I see kind of happening here is a little bit of an underdeveloped roast.
Mm-hmm.
The crust starts to dissipate much
Yeah.
quicker, which definitely is happening with this one. Whereas these two seem to be holding up just fine.
I also noticed that as I'm pouring the water in there, it just kind of looks lighter and just like doesn't have that good dark color to it.
Well, a lot of times it's going to be internal, so that's why you can't really tell on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Though this one's definitely a little bit darker color. I wish we had an Agtron.
Yeah.
But yeah, the crust on this one's definitely dissipating a lot quicker. So even though we don't have an Agtron scale, if we have a graph that crashes and we cup it the next day and it does that, we know it's probably it's an underdeveloped roast.
The development time for the underdeveloped is only 26 seconds also. It's
What?
4.7%.
What are the other ones?
Baked is got 26% development time ratio, 2 minutes 23 seconds.
So it's decent development time, a little bit
Yeah.
overkill.
The good one is 18%,
Yeah.
a minute and a half development time.
So based off this general information, when we talk about development time ratio, what we're basically talking about is when that first crack happens, because you start having these chemical reactions and the moisture is leaving the bean, so the cellulose walls are breaking down, causing that popping sound. So when first crack starts, we mark that. From that point to the drop of the roast is something we call DTR, development time ratio, kind of developed by Scott Rao. It's just one variable that we look at. We don't rely on it, but we look at that tells us if the sugar and acid compounds are developing properly. So underdeveloped, as Ben said, is 4%, meaning it's a very quick first crack to drop. The baked one is pretty good, 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes, 26% from first crack to end, whereas this one's 18% and kind of right on the money. Most all of our roasts are right on that same point. That doesn't mean we don't have some variables that kind of we wish we could change and want to manipulate a little better, but most of ours are in that 20% range. Yep, exactly. I think that's a perfect point. So underdeveloped is pretty easy to spot on the cupping table even before you start tasting the coffee, both in the crust dissipating, the color of the coffee. Even if you look at the beans, you can kind of tell, but definitely just even right now the coloration of the brew. Definitely has more of that. It even looks hay.
Yeah, it doesn't look very appetizing to me. I would much rather drink something like this. It's like darker and
Or even the baked looks good.
yeah, it looks fine.
So far, I think I would have a harder time picking out the baked. But though once we start tasting, it might be a very clear distinction. So.
Yeah.
Cool. So we let it brew for 4 minutes before the break. We break, we clear, let it cool another 4 minutes, and basically we do rounds every 4 minutes. The reason we do that is because it gives you about 10 to 15 degrees of cooling the coffee between those 4 minutes. And every time the coffee cools, it changes. So we want to taste it within those changes. Also, the closer it gets to our body temperature, the better we can taste certain flavors. One of the things we look for in a good coffee is balance of quality cupping each round. So as the coffee cools, does it maintain its character and its structure, and does it stay good every time, or is it great when it's hot, terrible when it's cold, or vice versa? One thing we look for. And we're gonna start with the good. The interesting thing so far, and this is just as it's hot, can't really slurp well, is that I feel like the underdeveloped actually tastes better
That's what I was gonna say.
than
yeah.
the baked.
Yeah, I prefer that one, which is so weird.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's I can tell it's grassier, but still I would take that over that.
Yeah, like that one, like the aftertaste of that one just doesn't.
But I'm curious what that does as it cools and as we're able to slurp a little bit better. So, Ben, what would you say is the biggest difference between the baked and the control?
I would say the aftertaste for me is the main thing I really kind of taste. Like this one is definitely like bitter. It's not as sweet. That one has a great aftertaste, and it's just really well balanced, and that one has a nice acidity to it. But like this acidity kind of gets like muted in a way, and
Yeah,
the bitterness kind of attacks it more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very muted. This has a nice crisp. You can taste a lot of the flavors, kind of the apple, the citrus. It's like a good coffee. And this one, it's like very boring.
Which I've never tasted a Burundi before.
One way to describe it too is what Jeff Watts did the other day in a webinar that we were in. He talks about resolution in TVs, so standard, HD, 4K, and then whatever. There's like 4 different ones.
It was 8K.
This one is like the high resolution. You can see each pixel. You can see the flavors. The flavors are there. This one, there's flavor, but it's like standard definition. It's like it'll be pixelated if you zoom in. The flavors are far off. It's hard to tell what they are.
So we got 4K, 1080p, and HD.
That one, I don't know. That one wouldn't
This is
be-
4K. These, if anything, maybe this is HD and this is standard.
Yeah,
def.
360, 360p. Just like YouTube.
Ironically, this one also, as it cools, the acidity flattens a lot. So it doesn't maintain its structure. At first, as it was hot, it was like, oh, this is pretty good. It's actually not as bad as I was expecting. But now that it's cooling, the structure is losing. The acidity specifically.
It's kind of getting
I
sour.
noticed tea does that often. It's better when it's cold. It seems like
What is?
tea is
Oh,
it's
tea,
like better
yeah.
when it's cold and when it gets warm. It's got a nasty type. Some of them do.
Yeah.
But when you come back over to this one, it still has its integrity. It's still a good, well-balanced acidic.
Let's talk about how that relates to the gospel. You can cut that out.
Jesus said, blessed are those who do not bake their coffees. This one, ironically, has a great sweetness. It's sweeter. Way sweeter than that. So now I want you to compare these two. I want you to go back and forth. Because of the development time on this, you can taste a lot more of the sugar compounds.
Yeah.
The acidity's muted, but the sugar is still pretty heightened. Even as it cools, it's a very sweet coffee. That one is all acidity.
It kind of makes me like I don't know what the word is, but like when you taste something sour and like your lips kind of
Yeah.
like curl up.
It's like an aftertaste.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you eat a warhead.
You're old enough to know what a warhead is?
Yes.
I guess those things were out for a
Used to
while.
get those in elementary school all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's still a very sweet coffee.
Yeah.
And then after tasting those two, if you come back to this one, you realize it's the best of both worlds. It has acidity, it has sweetness, it has balance. Now that they're all kind of cooled for the most part, we've maintained what we thought from even the beginning as we were smelling the aromatics, which is this one's maintained its integrity, still good as it cooled, great balance of acidity and sweetness. The baked one, I really like it in terms of the sweetness, but it again, it's distant. It's standard definition. Its acidity is muted. This one has that acidity at first. And I'm going to be so bold as to make some statements about other specialty coffee roasters. I see a lot of people doing this because they're trying to get that lighter roast. They end up underdeveloping it, which gives it great acidity, but less sweetness. And oftentimes the acidity isn't a developed acidity, so it comes across as grassy, hay-like, and doesn't uphold through the cooling. So by the time you get to cool, it's like not even there anyway. So you might get a cup of coffee. At first, it's like, boom, it's great. It's so good, the first 4 sips. But then after that, it really just starts to decline. And, you know, customers know what they're tasting. They're not stupid. They may not be seasoned cuppers or know how to describe things, but people know, their palates are a lot smarter than we give them credit. And so you'll see a lot of people complain like, oh man, the light roast, they blame it on the roast. And this is part of the problem we want to dissolve, is the misconception of what things mean. This does not equate to light roast. This is about development of acid and sugar compounds. This is also a light roast, but it's delicious. So we want to refrain from ever saying things like, I don't like light roast, or that company roasts too light. And it's a learning curve. I'm not bashing people who do this. It's just, I think we're all learning how to roast a well-balanced cup. I think we all want the same thing. We all want the best intrinsic flavor that bean has to offer. And it's hard to achieve that. Roasting is not an easy process. It's extremely scientific. There's a lot of variables at play, even summer, winter, age of green beans, etc. But this is something we want to stray away from. And hopefully we're all striving to develop the acids a little better along with the sugars and having a more well-balanced cup. So this was a great, for me, I enjoyed this. Because we could roast and try to get these graphs the way we wanted to, but it's a lot easier to just to buy it from someone who's already done it and got it squared away. Now, questions, can we unknowingly taste this on the cupping table?
I would say I could definitely, for the underdeveloped.
I agree with that.
I would like to think that I can trust my palate enough at this point to decipher those. I'm gonna say yes, but I'd have to test myself.
This was definitely, it would be my hardest because I love the sweetness in this cup.
Yeah.
This one I think is pretty easy because all the color, the dissipation of the crust, all that stuff.
I feel like it can definitely be like more baked. I feel like they're like.
I agree with that.
They did a pretty good job of like doing it just barely, which I enjoy that they did that because it helps me as a roaster see how close you can come.
I would almost say this is actually a little bit sweeter than that one.
Yeah.
But again, muted distance, so we prefer the 4K. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. This is why we cup all the time. Ideally twice a week. We roast Mondays and Thursdays, so we generally cup Tuesdays and Fridays. We don't only just do production cuppings, but we do things like this. Recently, we took Lenarco, which is our current micro lot from Colombia, and we cupped an old roast with a newer roast. We had one more. What was the other one on the table? We were testing the different
I think it was just
ages
like,
even.
Yeah, it was like I think it was like 3, 2, and 1 week.
Yeah.
I think it was just a week.
So it's something we try to do as much as possible. Obviously, there's people out there that cup every single day, and there's green buyers and people at Origin, and those people are amazing. Their palates are amazing. But this is how we continue to grow, and hopefully this was a little insight into the intricacies that we put into ensuring that we're doing our best to get this product. And even if it's a medium roast, it's the same concept. We're trying really hard, and it's not too difficult to achieve. You don't have to bake a medium roast. It's possible to get a nice declining curve, just like you see here, for a medium roast. It's all about the power and the air and the play that those two have, as well as even controlling the volume of beans going into based off the size of your roaster and the capacity of it, because obviously the more room you have in it also dictates all those things. So there's just so many variables, but we're always trying to do this. And so whether it's our light roast, medium roast, actually one thing we've been working a lot on, right Ben, is our dark roast. Our dark roast, full transparency. Our dark roast is a baked coffee. It's a baked coffee because it's nearly impossible to get enough momentum past first crack and into second crack without it at some point either plateauing or flicking. I think it's possible. It's just something we're continually working on.
Yeah.
It's harder on our machine. Our ProBot P12 actually has no variability on the air, so we cannot force more or less air in certain points of the roast, whereas a lot of roasters have both the variability of the power and the fan, as well as even the drum speed. So our roaster, though I love it, has a pretty limited. It's limited in its ability to really manipulate the roast. But we're going to be playing with Dark Knight. I still think it's a great coffee. But really, again, the goal with Dark Knight is a little bit more of the roast.
Yeah.
The roast flavor.
Yeah, it's a very difficult coffee to roast, and I think we owe it to our customers because it is like it's probably our top seller, I think, last year and so far this year. So that being said, I definitely want to just make sure it's as good as it can be. So.
Can't finish with that underbelt. Well, any final words?
Not really.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching. Appreciate y'all. Hop online, mattpriestcoffee.com.
See ya.
Buy a bag of coffee. Leave a comment down below. Let us know what you want to learn, what else there is, and what we can bring to the table. And we'd love to just keep doing these. So, appreciate y'all.